Good afternoon, our dear participants, dear guests, dear speakers, our dear journalists. So we are glad to welcome you at this roundtable that is dedicated to a topic 30 years of the Budapest Memorandum, a time for reassessment. We decided to arrange this roundtable for two reasons. First of all, Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, so in partnership with the Kiev Safety Forum and in partnership with our colleagues, different institutions, we always paid a lot of attention to the safety issues, and so the issue of Ukraine. So this is so important issue as never before, probably, especially in the context of Russia threatening Ukraine with a nuclear weapon. Let's just call it its names. So, other nuclear state gave guarantees, and we were confident that we are going to be protected and secured even without nuclear weapon. And the second reason is also very important, cooperation with our parliament, with the Committee for Foreign Affairs, with the head of the committee, Alexander Mereshko. He is here now with us. So this idea, we came up with this idea quite a long time ago. I'm glad that we have representatives, experts and parliamentarians. You know that now we already have. I'm not going to mention this thing because Mr. Marashko is going to mention that. So there are some good steps. The resolution, but he will speak about it later. So we haven't invited any official representatives. So neither from presidential office, neither from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So in fact, they already expressed their opinions. Our president expressed his opinion, and maybe in the evening we are going to hear some more. So we heard different statements. But we're here in order to discuss what was not there, not in those statements. Maybe speak about some details, but the most important thing is that I just wanted to mention that we do not represent official structures here. And nobody asked me about that, nobody from Parliament. I just believe that it will be better that way. We don't have any representatives. But I believe that this issue, that is something that concerns all of us and that unites all different parties. And we have representatives from different parties here. It's not because we wanted to represent parties here, no. It's just because these people, Alexander Mereshko, Alexander Cherenko, so they are, they are so good in this topic. They made a lot of statements. So, speaking other parts, Yuri Kostenko. So more than once he attended our events here, and we wanted to talk about nuclear safety. I really hope that your book and your statements that you made here before, so I hope that people were able to get acquainted with your book. But today we would like to discuss more like international legislative consequences. I'm happy that we have Mr. Venko here, and I heard some new information that one of the authors of the Budapest Memorandum. It will be interesting to hear the thoughts of those who have started that work, the work on that document. So there were a lot of discussions in Kiev Safety Forum, and so We heard the speech from the director of that organization. I'm grateful for your, for your time. Thank you for coming to this event. And also, I want to mention that you worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so it will be really interesting for us to hear your opinion. I'm very glad that we have an opportunity to discuss these issues on a high level. And also we have a diplomat and researcher here, Mr. Alexander, and that will add to our discussion, a lot of I wanted to say provoking things, but no, actually, I cannot say that about you. But I understand that here it's more like maybe nuclear aspects, speaking of nuclear weapon, issues. But um, I think that Mr. Mikhailo so mentioned, when he spoke about the type of the missile that Russians used when they hit Ukrainian territory with that missile. So we will definitely need that expertise. So Yuri Makarov, Mr. Makarov, I cannot see you as just a journalist here, but more like rather as an expert. Why? So he plays the role of uh, for a person who worked on the film about Budapest. Tonight, that documentary will be broadcasted both in Ukrainian and English. So we cannot broadcast it here, but because that is a separate project. But your opinion is so important. We need to hear your opinion. I know that you took that documentary to Europe, so to different countries. Okay, so I don't want to waste time. I will not introduce our guests who are sitting in the meeting hall. We appreciate your time. Thank you for coming. But first of all, I wanted to mention three things. Number one, from my point of view, even till now, unfortunately, in our societies, there is no kind of general opinion about, like, on this document, on this memorandum on security assurance in connection with Ukraine's accession to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Again, so we will discuss what was fulfilled, what wasn't fully fulfilled. Second thing, there is some opinion expressed by some people that this Budapest memorandum is just, a useless paper. But I heard another opinion from my colleagues that this is like a monument. Well, if it's a monument, it's pretty much a moving monument. But again, so maybe I missed something. Russia, our enemies who crossed all possible boundaries and laws, they haven't even made any big statements about this memorandum. So the thoughts in our societies, if it's important or not. So what is the nature? What is the essence? And this third thing that I wanted to mention. So I believe that everybody here has some circle, of people whom they fellowship with, and I believe that there are so polar opinions on this document, and probably this is the most controversial kind of perception of this document. Even after 30 years, there are so many different opinions all over the world about this document. So even though like the students of the in the University of International Relations, so they study the documents in their first study year. At least I can say that we played the role of a professor and we taught students about this memorandum. But still, I think there are not, not so many people in our society who clearly understand this memorandum. Okay, so I would like to invite Alexander Mereshko so for him to inform us about the decision of the parliament on this event, and after that we will give like 7 to 10 minutes to each participant, and for them to express their opinions. And I will try to, as a moderator, I will try to give some direction, but again, I cannot limit our guests. So each one will have 7 to 10 minutes, and then we will discuss questions. Okay. Oh, by the way, I also want to mention that we have a live stream, and we have a translation into English. Sorry, I just started speaking very fast. I forgot that we have translation. So yes, I would like us to pay attention at that, and we would like the result of this discussion to be brought to the centers of making decisions in Europe. Of course, I wanted to say it, but I will not. But at least to those circles where they need to hear it. Well, thank you so much. That topic is really relevant, and I absolutely agree with you, especially that on the background of nuclear sabotage, nuclear even blackmail that Russia performs, that becomes even more important. As an international lawyer, for me, this memorandum is not a monument. It's a living document that needs to be used even till now as one of the important like argumentations. So and again, so the fact that the violation itself does not cancel the document itself. So today, so I wanted to share that in the parliament. We were discussing and developing a statement to the parliaments of of all the countries, and it's important to explain what is the position of our parliament. So what is our message? But first, I wanted to say that if I would write a book on this topic, or at least an article, I would just call it a mystery of Budapest Memorandum. So, I would choose two epigraphs. So the first one is like they will. Yeah, so I would like to use the first statement as they will deceive you. That is the first quotation. And second one, it will be quotation by Cohen. And that is description of 1973, the war in the Middle East. US haven't helped Israel until the Prime Minister of Israel, Golda Meir, to threatened to use nuclear weapon to protect their country, and then so the help came immediately. So this is just a quotation. You see how different the situation can be, and there are different conclusions can be drawn. So speaking about our statement, I would like to mention, there are a few important points there. So, in that our statement, in that our statement, we appeal to nuclear states. For now, it's 9 states. So first of all, we ask them to recognize responsibility of Russia for violating the international laws. So there are different kinds of responsibility. So there is international, legislative, and moral, other kinds of responsibility. Number two, so we need to put even more efforts for Russia to leave the Parisian nuclear station. So that is also important to stop that nuclear blackmail, because now Russia acts like international terrorists. We speak about it in all sessions. We spoke about it with the Chinese representatives. So next one, it's important to create an international mechanism for control, and for guarantees for countries who were willingly, give up their nuclear weapon. The important lesson here about the behavior of non-nuclear states, those states who joined, who accessed the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. So now different states, they see that guarantees do not always work. Also, next one. So speaking of yeah, so I felt like it's better to say like nuclear guarantees, but we decided to say like a special guarantees. And the last message to parliaments of European states. So for them to appeal to their governments to support invitation of Ukraine to NATO. For us, the main security guarantee for Ukraine can be the membership in NATO. So, and the last statement, what I would like to actually hear during our discussion, for me, as for a lawyer, it's important to hear what is the nature of this document. So, is it an international political document or a political, agreement? Because, there are different perceptions of it. So, for example, the entry into force depends on it. So, I would agree that for any lawyer, it's important to understand. So, what are specific obligations for the parties, for Ukraine and for other parties? Because any agreement so has certain rights and certain obligations for all the parties. And also another question that I would like to discuss today. So, what is the lesson? What lesson we can draw from this? So we can also just remember the statement from Clinton. I also remember in 1994 that was an article by John Mearsheimer, so about Ukraine giving up a nuclear weapon, and he predicted the invasion of Russia. I understand that after every event, there will be some people saying, like, I predicted that, but this is a fact. Okay, thank you so much. I believe that, yes, you also know the answer, and I believe that as international lawyer, you have your answers, but we would like to hear different opinions today. So I would like to invite Pavlo Zhevnerenko. Please tell us, how did it happen? And if you are able, please give your answers to any of the questions that were just raised now. So, what is the nature of this document? I will try to speak shortly. For some reason, there is no sound. Okay. Yes, so microphone works now. Okay, so in 1992 and after, I worked as in the Commission in International Relations. I worked as a counselor, and there was a terrible pressure on Ukraine. Speaking of nuclear weapon, that was not from the side of Russia, but from the side of U.S. So we worked with a lot of Americans, and the main argumentation for, you know, why we should, give up so our nuclear weapon, because the other point was like, the other option was like, we could just make it tender. No, you need to just give it away. Why? Okay. So when we discussed with Mr. Brzezinski, what are the guarantees for Ukraine, and he said U.S. doesn't give any guarantees to anybody. The only exception is Israel, and that is just a special situation, Holocaust, and so on. So, but for others, there was no precedent. So we found, the peace agreement, 1952. So that was a precedent. So I wrote a letter to Mr. Brzezinski. So you see that is a handwritten letter. I sent it by fax. And next day I received an answer, and from that day we started working in frames of the Ukrainian committee, working on the security policy. So the text that we prepared is pretty much the same as the text of memorandum. It's just that also France was added. So speaking of the France memorandum, speaking of the Budapest memorandum, I apologize. So in order to just discreditate any event or document, that was just one of the ways to just make fun of it. The Russian propaganda. They say that Khrushchev gave Crimea to Ukraine just as a present. So it is really difficult to find a real information on the internet, the law, and how it really happened in the history. But it's a lot of that Russian propaganda, now. So also, again, so Russians were trying to make, are trying to make fun of this memorandum, saying that it's like not really full-fledged, agreement. So that is not really, I can quote. So it's written there that any document that is signed between two or more states is an international treaty. So it doesn't matter how it's called, agreement, treaty, so it can be called anything, but it is considered and an international. And the next issue, so you know that there is a different understanding. I mean, the different word that was used. In Ukrainian and Russian versions, there were guarantees. In English, there was assurances. So, but the English word assurance translates, like one of the translations is also guarantees. So, but we know that this agreement, this memorandum was signed in four copies, and they were authentical. So it says that, yeah, so the document contains the phrase that signed in four equally authentic copies in Ukrainian, in English, in Russian. So it means that those parties who signed this memorandum, so the signatures of those parties, it's a US president and the British prime minister appear not under the English text, but also not only under the English text, but also in Ukrainian and Russian, where it says guarantee. So ratification is not described in the memorandum, so it came into force right after signing it. So, speaking of now, from my point of view, why, what is the purpose of Budapest Memorandum? I agree with Mr. Alexander. This is not a monument. This is a living documents. And point number 6 is very important from my point of view. Consult with one another if questions arise regarding those commitments. So, from my point of view, and not just my point of view, you know, any discussions with Russia are just useless because Russia proved that as a state they do not fulfill, what they sign. So even if now any new document will be signed, what is the guarantee that Russia will not violate that document again? So, looking at the history, the way that Russia did it throughout the years. So again, now administration of the, U.S. administration is changing. So, okay, let us be serious now. Let's sit at the negotiations table. And since Russia, you know, is not performing, what they signed, so we need to sit with US and UK. So, will you have all the possibilities to put Russia at the table too? Because those sanctions were not even like maximum possible sanctions. So if they perform similar sanctions to Russia as they performed to Cuba, so that will be different. So. $750 billion Russia received for their oil. So, of course, they can just do whatever they want. So, we signed in 1994. We signed that insurance, we signed that insurance policy. So, Ukraine performed everything. Ukraine fulfilled everything. So, and that was a huge step. So, if we count the price of that nuclear weapon that we just gave up, so if we look at it from a different side, like real, losses, for so meaning like Ukraine fulfilled their obligations. So and agreements need to be fulfilled. So we fulfilled our part. Please fulfill your part too. And the last one on Budapest Memorandum. So, in the program of the candidate for Ukrainian president, Zelensky, when he was just preparing for the campaign, so they were also talking about it. And two-thirds of people, so they were for that memorandum. So, and the document from 2021, so also speaks about, application of this memorandum in order for our partners to fulfill what they need to fulfill. So, Budapest Memorandum is a living document, or it's still sleeping. I hope we will wake it up. Is it coma or is it something more optimistic? So, how sleeping? Well, sleeping. No, it's not coma. Okay, thank you. We will think how to bring it back to life today. We will think today how to bring it back to life. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. So the only thing before I invite Mr. Kostenko, so I would like to mention, for our not to have different perception, Budapest Memorandum kind of concluded that period when Ukraine agreed to give away, the nuclear weapon. So that was kind of a final point. Um, but the meeting in Moscow that happened before, so that actually was, you know, if not that meeting, so no document would exist, and that would be catastrophic. Unfortunately, that was such period of time, um, and Clinton mentioned actually not long ago that yes, he admitted that there was a pressure from U.S. And that is actually important to hear from you. I wanted us to hear that. But at that point, there was a pressure, even until the point that we already decided everything. So now you, Ukraine, want to raise some questions again. So we need to remember so that they wanted not only, you know, disarm ours, but even like they wanted for us not to be able to even produce even like any, even like missiles. And I'm glad that Ukraine was able to stand for it. And so we still have the right to produce, well, we at least we produce the spare parts, for the peaceful use of it. So together in cooperation with US. But at the stage when we were preparing the text, before that, there was a stage when, from my point of view, everything was already decided. I mean, could it be like a better document or worse? That's difficult to say. But the precipitating events kind of predicted what followed. So, for our next speaker, I would like to answer two questions from your point of view. Uh, so, uh, so all the obligations that Ukraine had according to Budapest Memorandum, so were they all fulfilled? And number two, hypothetically, we do not talk hypothetically today. What could it be? And, you know, hypothetically judge or praise those people who signed it. Let's talk about just, the international aspects. Legal aspects, international aspects. So, if you would be able to kind of bring this document back to life, so would you work on its body, or would you take its genes and try to develop something new, and then also put those guarantees there? And the key point why we all gathered here today, so nuclear threats. So, I mean, is it changing any situation? So, we discussed it like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So, from your point of view, are there any aspects that can be used today? Thank you. I will try in my answers to be, kind of to rely on resolutions of Ukrainian parliament and documents that supported nuclear disarmament in Ukraine. Why? Because today, in this topic, especially in mass media, not only so in higher political circles and not just Ukrainian, there is an information that is circulating, that Kremlin developed in the topic of nuclear disarmament of Ukraine, and then this strategy that was formed in the intelligence center. So they were looking at different options. And unfortunately, even up to today, Ukrainian authorities, in even like performing like today's uh, politics. They stand not on the decisions of our parliament, but on the Russian propaganda against Ukraine. And so for Alexander Mereshko, for member of parliament and for chair of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Foreign Policy, I would advise, and I will quote. This quotation was sent to President Kravchuk on the 7th of December 1992 through our ambassador Oleg Belarus. So it was passed by Mr. Wisner. So the essence is, so we know about your problems with Russia, but nuclear weapon will not protect you from Russia. On the opposite, the issue of your security will be even sharper. But it will prevent you from becoming a member of transatlantic structures and your cooperation with them, meaning NATO. So that was December 1992. Then in January, so there was Ukrainian delegations headed by Boris Tarasuk, 3rd of January in Washington, at the meeting with delegation in State Department. According to an article in American press, they could not understand, so few times the State Department refused proposals of Mr. Tarasuk, who brought up, the Ukrainian opinion, because you didn't understand what Ukrainian delegation demands. Because Mr. Tarasuk demanded not a membership in NATO, but something like guarantees, something that is called now paper guarantees that would be needed in order to convince Ukrainian parliamentarians to vote for the agreement about nuclear disarmament. So even American press wrote that they refused our proposal few times. So again, it's not about guarantees, safety guarantees. So President Bush signed the following. So I continue quoting from that article. So they said that guarantees that U.S. can provide will not be different from those that ex-Secretary Baker provided for all the countries, and they are described in the United Nations documents. So those are guarantees provided by nuclear states to non-nuclear states that nuclear states will not use their nuclear weapon against non-nuclear states. I don't know, Mr. Pavlov mentioned something that was born in the Committee for International Relations led by Pavlichko. No, that's norms of security charter. What we see in Budapest Memorandum is no different from international documents that United Nations members have in their legislation. So, speaking of the second question that you asked, so the Budapest Memorandum. So, is it really just a paper or not a paper? Again, based on the decision of, based on the opinion of Ukrainian Parliament. After invasion, Ukrainian Parliament appealed to the countries who signed the Budapest Memorandum, demanding to activate the obligations that was performed. So the Ministers of International Affairs of UK, US, Ukraine, and other countries, they gathered, and Lavrov, Prime Minister Lavrov from Russia, so refused to come. And then after 1 month, there was a meeting in Geneva. The platform for negotiations between opponents or countries in the states of war. And Mr. Lavrov arrived there and answering the state secretaries Kerry's question what Russian, green, how they were called, like green, like puppets or like soldiers. What do they do in Crimea? He said that, well, he just ignored that question. So Lavrov just said that he's not authorized. So that was in 2014. So then the negotiations were transformed in a Normand format. So in Budapest Memorandum, countries, partners, they looked at Russia as aggressor. But in the other document, so Ukraine became the same partner as France and Germany in order to help Ukraine to deal with the war. So, to deal with the civil war. So now the question, probably the most relevant question from the point of view of today. So what shall we do with Budapest Memorandum, with the NATO membership? Because you know that just a few days ago, so there was a statement that we are not happy with this document, we're not satisfied with it. So Ukraine just needs to get real guarantees, like security guarantees, in the form of membership in NATO. How to combine these appeals of the leadership of Ukraine, the now leadership of Ukraine, with other decisions on this topic. So I would advise to those who work on international affairs today, I would advise them to read those documents. So this book is called The History of Nuclear Disarmament of Ukraine. This is not memoirs. This is just a collection of decisions on this topic. So this is the past of Ukraine. So nuclear war, this is a state property. Pavlo mentioned that there was 43 million, the price of what we just gave to Russia, weapons that we just gave to Russia, gave away. So, but according to new estimates, so the price for producing of weapons that Ukraine gave away to Russia, there was more than $100,000 billion. So Ukraine received some fuel for nuclear station, so that is equal to $1 billion US. So if you add the, because Russia used our missiles, our liquid fuel missiles. And all the kind of missiles. So altogether, it costs $3 trillion US that Ukraine gave away to a brotherly, in quotes, state Russia for free. So now, speaking of legislation, the Ukrainian parliament decided not to give a Ukrainian nuclear weapon to anybody. Number two, so nuclear disarmament was supposed to be financed not from the state budget because that is a very expensive thing. Uh, so so $6 billion US. At that time, Ukrainian budget was $10 billion. So that's why we demanded that financing would be performed from the international funds. The US agreed to that. So next one. So technological uh, technological technology. So when we just gave away this weapon that was actually supposed to, so as our parliament wanted to have it, so our parliament wanted to just destroy this weapon. And so, but only transatlantic structures like NATO is the main guarantee. So why Ukrainian parliament acted not according to their own decisions, but according to, wishes of Kremlin? That needs to be explored and analyzed, and certain conclusions need to be drawn. So the most important that the legislative base of Ukraine was not a foundation for these actions. So, and the main problem. So, what to do with this problematic issue today? So Budapest is alive, and it doesn't matter how people call it, like paper or assurance instead of guarantee. So it's still working. Nobody kind of canceled it. So Ukraine is still there. So Zelensky threatened to, leave it. No, I just wanted to say that that was just a perception of journalists. So, well, honestly, I was listening to his speech, and that was my perception too, because the way he said it's like either to immediately implement or Ukraine will just leave that memorandum. So this document needs to be used in what way? So we have countries, partners who help Ukraine to resist Russian aggression. First of all, this is US and the Great Britain. First of all, that needs to be a separate platform for constant consultations on the topic how, in what way Ukraine can move forward in this topic of searching, the peace agreement. And so this peace agreement, so what guarantees it has to have? So, well, that's very clear that without any kind of guarantees, so any agreement that we sign with Russia, so will be dead, as all the agreements signed between Ukraine and Russia, including this agreement about friendship and recognition of borders, so and so on. So consultations need to happen on the document that will be brought on the diplomatic level, on the level of diplomatic negotiations, including maybe signing Ukraine, this agreement between Russia and Ukraine and Russia. So next, so that needs to be used, for entering a negotiations process. And for results on the battlefield. And that also needs to be done not on the level of like discussion in public panels. No, that has to be done in a different way, how it was always done in international relations. So those plans, they are discussed as top secret plans, not as press conferences for journalists. So, and the last thing I want to say for about Budapest Memorandum, it can make us way to NATO, yes, but after certain phases. For today, for me, considering very difficult procedure for having member, for Ukraine for, getting the status of membership, considering the experience of Finland, for example, and Sweden. So we need to draw some conclusions and to establish certain phases, because some countries can block it, and we it also needs to be certain kind of guarantees kind of like interim guarantees, and those are very fast and effective security guarantees, as today's war in Israel shows. With terrorists, and in fact, not with terrorists, but with Iran and other countries. So I would end my speech with the following. So when Ukrainian political circles and today's like authorities and parliament, first of all, so they need to remember that the executive branch so needs to kind of execute the laws, and not dictate. So today, parliamentarian, because the laws were created by parliament. So they should analyze the whole this story, how Ukraine was deprived of nuclear weapon by Russia, not U.S. All these opinions that they were pressing on us. I was part of that delegation about nuclear disarmament. I led negotiations in different levels with senators, with the State Department, with others. My dear friends, U.S. never threatened us, never pressed on us, you know. So that if you will not give away this nuclear weapon, then we will do that and that. And Yeltsin was saying that we will just cut energy sources for you. No, U.S. said it differently. U.S. said we understand that you are a nuclear state because it's also fixed in a Lisbon Protocol that is forgotten now. Because after that, four independent states, Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan, were those states that had nuclear weapon. And by the way, by that Lisbon Protocol, that is part of the agreement that was ratified by Ukrainian parliament, and then it was mentioned that Lisbon Protocol is a part of that. The agreement start one. So that is inalienable part. And the second part that was mentioned there, that signatory states, so they were obliged to give away the nuclear weapon, and it was 36%. So that there was a certain amount of weapon, and Ukraine. So the Ukraine take obligation so to give it away, and then that was important in ratification and financing, to discuss all the details, and then through ratification in Verkhovna Rada, we should have moved towards a nuclear free status of Ukraine. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you. I gave you more time because you actually, described such a huge part of the Ukrainian history in short. So we appreciate you, but still, I would like to recommend to all of us to read that book. And from my point of view, for some reason, uh, you know, our people like to read materials by like American researchers, but like there is one American researcher who wrote the research based on these materials that are described in this book. So with my all respect to her, but again. That cannot be just any document cannot just guarantee security in full. Okay, the one thing that I wanted to mention in response to what you said, so that's important for understanding the future actions of Ukraine. I was reading your book very carefully. The one point is that I cannot agree categorically. When we believe that Ukraine can, impose the negotiations format. So there was a statement that new president came and he changed the format. I categorically disagree because Geneva format was acceptable format for us. Geneva format, yeah. So if everything would be so simple, that we want a Budapest format, and then what if President Obama will be here and German Chancellor, and they tell us all of them. And what do we do? Like, refuse? Do you think China will join Budapest format together with us? That is more difficult than seemed to us, and I would like to correct a little bit that all the written appeals concerning Budapest format and no, actually not correct, but just to add, yeah. So it was just performed by Ukrainian authorities through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. First time that was in 2009. Well, maybe that was earlier too, but I can only speak about what I was working on. So there was a 15 years of Budapest Memorandum, and we prepared letters to 5 states, and we received the answers, and these answers could be found in the archive of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In short, those countries confirmed their guarantees. So what that's what you mentioned. Uh, is kind of negative guarantees. So negative guarantees like non attacking you with nuclear weapons. So 4 countries they follow this, and the fifth country, Russia. So Russia, of course, violates it. In 2014, there was an official letter. And then there was a response. This is nuclear guarantees. We confirm it. What shall we do with Russia? We don't know. We confirm these nuclear guarantees, but Russia doesn't threaten you. So I would like to add that more than once I heard such thought, such opinion that Ukraine refused Budapest format, Geneva format, and even Minsk format haven't existed. There was Normand format. But in fact, remember who was putting pressure. And I can tell you, there are countries who put pressure on Ukraine, and this is our lesson. When somebody puts pressure on you, you have to have argumentation, additional, internal. And if we want to have any format with China, Budapest format, what argumentation do we have in order to force China, or at least to force China to at least tell you Russia like you are not, following what you signed? So there was 5 sides, right? So for Ukraine and yeah, 4. Yes, I agree. Okay, so, okay, 4. So, who gave guarantees? Yes, I agree with you. But still, again, if all of them signed, so where where is at least one word about Russia, that Russia left that memorandum? No. So again, I do not agree that Ukraine can impose the any format. So we need to reanimate those formats. So we cannot impose multilateral formats, but even like I mean, so even now we have a lot of appeals for consultations. But well, if I would like to clarify that because I'm not saying that Ukraine has to suggest format for negotiations. I think that will be a prerogative of U.S. and other countries, including probably China. But I would like to suggest to use the platform of Budapest, where there are three countries, Ukraine, UK, US, where there is a consultation point, and consultations are performed not on the nuclear, attack of Ukraine, but also when the invasion is performed. So what we have now, so when the territorial integrity was violated, so that's what I meant. Okay, I understood you. Yeah, it's just that the problem is that so it still goes not really in line with the UN mechanisms and so on. But okay, so sorry, I I didn't mean to take another speech. So I would like to invite Alexei Honcharenko. I believe that. He will help us to sharpen the discussion even more. So, Alexei Honcharenko, member of Parliament of Ukraine and European Solidarity Fraction. Um, so, and yeah, so I'm a member of parliament and and the head of the committee. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank you, dear Mr. Valeri, and all my colleagues. So I believe that this roundtable is extremely important. This conversation is extremely important. First of all, it's super interesting. So what I here, unfortunately, we cannot hear it in Parliament. So we just heard that when there was a 15 years anniversary of Budapest Memorandum, there was special event in Verkhovna Rada, but unfortunately now this is 30 years anniversary and nothing happens, no special events in Ukrainian parliament, neither today nor tomorrow. I believe we should have done it. I mean, we need to initiate it, maybe at least at the platform of a committee. But we need to, get it to the stage of parliamentary hearings because this is super important topic. Unfortunately, that we do not discuss it enough. So yeah, I hope, yeah. So I just haven't mentioned another my colleague, the member of parliament here. So I believe all of us we will agree on that. Another thing that I wanted to say that I have a lot of respect to all the professional diplomats who were involved in those processes and. So it was very interesting for me to listen to you, and I respect your knowledge and your experience. So I'm a politician in action now, and I will talk in terms of politics. I believe that Budapest Memorandum is super needed for Ukraine now in order to remind to our partner states that it's not a charity from their side, to help us. So we will not talk about Russia and Ukraine. Sorry, we will not talk about Russia and China now, but to all the parties of that memorandum. So there is serious moral part in it. Pretty often I participate in different discussions in media, in international media. So not many people even know that Ukraine had nuclear weapon. What they say like, so Russia, what is Ukraine? So Ukraine is a territory that was part of Russia for many years, and now Russia wants to get it back. So they don't know that there was a third nuclear arsenal. They don't know a lot of important information about Ukraine, and this is life important for us to bring it to their attention, so they would know what did Ukraine do. So how Ukraine sacrificed our security by giving away nuclear weapon. And how it ended for us, it also stimulates the whole world to also think that you can only guarantee or you can only secure your you guarantee your security just by having nuclear weapon. It will not disappear by itself, believe me, because the consequences, what is happening in the world now, they will remain. They will not disappear as somebody might think. This is a very important thing, and politically we need to use it. And yeah, of course. We need to try to renew certain formats, and one of the instruments of renewing. So I said like public hearings. Yeah, that's important. It's important to work with Western media and so on. But there is one more instrument, and when we talk about what Yuri mentioned, where are parliamentarian instruments today in Parliament? I asked the question why we're not creating parliamentary commission, kind of to investigate what happened 30 years ago or 32, 33, how this process was happening. First of all, most part of those people, they are still active and alive. So, at first, it needs to be political and parliamentarian instrument, and then criminal cases need to be opened. What did these people do? What was their motivation? People who deprived Ukraine of our protection. Without providing the guarantees described, it's an important question and it's not too late to raise it. Number two, existing and work of such parliamentarian commission, there would be also an instrument to remind the world that at least Ukraine remembers, Ukraine knows, Ukraine wants to remind to the world, and we have all the rights. That's why we need to do it for sure. And the third, so I will try to become the first one who will who will keep the time given. So the third thing that I want to mention that today, nuclear state Russia fights against Ukraine. So whatever army we will build, Russia does have nuclear weapon. We do not have nuclear weapon, and Russia already showed that they are ready to use nuclear weapon at least for blackmail, at least. So the question of Ukrainian survival sounds very simple. Either we, as Mr. Yuri mentioned, and I agree with him, ideal option for us, we become NATO member and we get that nuclear umbrella from our nuclear enemy. So, or if we are not invited to NATO, I do not see any other option. I understand that it's very difficult technological process and it's a lot of questions about it. I understand that nobody in the whole world will like it. I understand that it can have different consequences for Ukraine, but I don't see any other way. One is very technologically difficult way to kind of to build a new nuclear weapon, but it's very hard. But the other way is priority way is to become NATO member. But if NATO doesn't want to see us as a member, so I don't know what else we can do. I hope that if we remind about it to the world, that will kind of help them, uh, you know, to keep their obligations. So, unfortunately, we haven't used that instrument fully yet. I believe that for us it's an objective reality, and we have a right, well, even more than a right. We have the need to speak from that position, and we have nothing to be ashamed of. I said, I said it to Mr. Blinken in February this year, and nothing happened. The world has not collapsed. How come? How can you say it? Yes, we can say it. We can ask. Well, the other thing is that I didn't get appropriate answer, but it doesn't mean that we do not need to raise those questions and use this instrument. So you see, I kept my 10 minutes. Thank you. Well, almost. But I would like to even expand the question. So, you mentioned about creation of a parliament, like commission that would investigate. Well, let us wait for commission to negotiate the Minsk agreement, Kharkiv aviation, and all the issues. I mean, honestly, it's very good suggestion, but the role of parliament doesn't let our society to speak about objective, like to say that it can be performed objectively. Unfortunately, Parliament lost a lot of their functions now. Yeah, I agree with the idea with these investigation commissions, but it's a lot of specific issues. So, can you imagine what will happen in the parliament if we suggest it? That was very good option when you suggested public hearings, and you share this position with your colleagues in the party. So what you said, what you mentioned, what President of Ukraine said in Munich. Yeah. So this, about the dilemma. So few days before full-scale invasion, that was mentioned in Munich. So I agree that these investigation commissions is a good thing, but at first we will have a discussion. We do not dare to call for criminal cases yet. With all my respect to your suggestion, can I speak shortly? Yes, I just would like to mention that this parliament commission as an instrument for different goals. Not just the one that was mentioned, but also there is a political aspect of that. And of course I have a lot of questions, but not, you know not quoting I don't want to quote one of our politicians, but we do not have any other platform in order to to achieve our goals. So at least here we have specific thing that would be able to be discussed. Thank you so much. Well, I wanted to say that you always have this platform. And again, I wanted to say that I'm very happy that there are professional politicians and experts. Now I would like to invite our next speaker, Vadim Halaychuk. So he is the first deputy chair of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Ukraine's integration into the European Union. So I know that you raised that question in Parliament. So, Mr. Vadim Halachuk, please, I would like to invite you. Maybe you may answer any of those questions that we were mentioned before. Thank you so much for your invitation. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I really promise to talk short because I want to hear from my colleagues as well. It's very interesting discussion, and in this context, I would like to draw attention from my point of view. It's worth it to mention European integration of Ukraine as our strategic direction, and also to be participants of those discussions performed in European Union now about the joint security policies and on all the existing risks. So and possible review of by so possible maybe a reassessment by us their position. So but I believe everybody would agree that safety issues were not regulated enough in frames of European Union. At least there was not fully clear how to build the safety policy in such crisis situations. And that's very unfortunate because often we forget about the Article 42 about the European Union. If the member state is the victim of aggression, all the states are obliged to provide help with all possible means according to U.S. statute, United Nations statute. So, that article is similar to guarantees that in Article 5 of NATO. So, and that was already applied when France was the victim of terroristic attacks. And also when U.S., suffered terroristic attack in New York in 2001. So there is a foundation. There is this legal formation, or there are legal formations. So, but Ukraine has very, from my point of view, sad but interesting experience of Budapest Memorandum. So the question is how to sign agreements that would actually work. So from my point of view, those discussions led in European Union now, we have to become very active participants now, because there is a process of reassessment in European Union, reassessment of the essence of those agreements, and those discussions are moving in a quite good direction. So, for example, how the help for Ukraine is performed. So one of those instruments, European Peace Facility Fund, it was created in order to finance different researches, conferences, and so on. Now it is used directly for purchasing weapons. So in order to kind of agree on European policies for these purchases of weapons. But this is a huge progress. This is huge progress, comparing to 2014 when Crimea was annexed and European Union didn't really react, didn't show any like sharp reaction. So, but between 2014 and now, it's a huge project. We need to admit it. So I believe that we need to support the idea of detailed exploration of this, our experience, share it with our European colleagues, pull them into the discussion, and in the future, since we chose our strategic direction to join EU, and as Lithuanian president mentioned before, that NATO is for life and EU is for better life. So everybody perfectly understands that security issue is, life important for, even for economic development. If you do not have security guarantees, so I mean that's doesn't help to develop your economy either. So we need to initiate, to come up with the proposals. So again, thank you so much for inviting me, and I support further work in this direction. Thank you so much for keeping your time. I wanted to ask you actually what you just mentioned. I also heard it from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of France before. And I will not even mention the Western European Union. There was such organization. So that was kind of a security organization for Europe, and it finished its existence in 2011. Again, the question from our partners, you will join EU, and there are very similar positions. Yeah, so then what about strategic bomber aircraft that are not there. What about other points? So idea is, I mean, this is a very good idea, but there are a lot of questions, you know. But how to involve U.S. and Canada to that discussion? Wow, absolutely. So it's pretty impossible without United States to just change the form of cooperation in the security sphere. And as a lot of experts say that Europe have not prepared for that. You remember that European Union was formed as union for steel and for coal. And speaking of lack of trust to each other and desire to control, became kind of foundation for further development. So when we speak now about lack of leadership in Europe, and when so Germans love saying like you definitely don't want us to become leaders, right? Because the history remembers. So the role of this American umbrella, security umbrella, also played a role in how how Europeans, well, they were not trusting each other and at first, and then they got to trust. But what is the future? But neither economically nor politically, Europe will not provide themselves with what U.S. provides now. But these conversations are, led now, and at least till some extent in certain spheres that will be performed. Europe will. Europe already realized the need to that, and now there are certain attempts for joint purchases. That was, also some steps made towards also maybe purchasing the weapon and ammunition, and that is also huge progress. So there is development, and we are part of that development, and we so that's important in many aspects. So for our further role, I see. So you see a lot of perspective in that issue. I wanted to ask you about possibly maybe some details that you could share with us when you were, uh, you know, working in this sphere in 2014. Well, by the way, speaking of the questions that we discussed now, these, questions of NATO and European Union, thank you so much, dear colleagues, for your participation. And I represent your participation in this wonderful event. I represent the team that was working on that Geneva format. I'm director of the Kiev Security Forum and Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine in 2014. So I would like to speak about that initiative of the Council for Security of Ukraine and Prime Minister Yatsenyuk. Yatsenyuk, so he instructed his assistants to work on the Russian on our response to the aggression of Russia in Crimea. So that work started and those consultations started in 2014, and those consultations is a separate interesting topic. I believe even till now the Geneva format that is a kind of also a result of those consultations and in general of work, in this format. So this format was an optimal format that adhered to international realities of that time. Valery Alexeyevich can speak more about the development of that format because he was a participant at that time. After Petro Poroshenko was elected as the president of Ukraine. But I would like to summarize a little bit and say that despite the fact that different formats existed and they were like till different extent effective and meaningful, but still all people who gathered here, so they agree on most important things. So we are all here like-minded people. So is there, I was listening to my colleagues and I formed 5 questions that I would like to answer shortly. Do we need to have like different opinions about the Budapest Memorandum? Well, I believe that it's not cacophony as somebody mentioned. So I think it's needed and it's useful to have those different opinions because, it's always good to have different opinions. So for our practical interests in particular, because it's also an element of big, uneasy but hopefully successful negotiation work. Is it an agreement? Yes, it's an agreement, and no doubt. So I think it's even strange that we ask ourselves, I mean, according to international laws, it is an agreement. And if somebody thinks it's not an agreement, I would like to hear their argumentation. Is it a monument? Yes, it's a monument, of course. Any big document of this kind with such huge consequences, it's a monument. It's monument to that period of time. While it doesn't mean any negative connotation, it doesn't mean that that document is dead if it's a monument. So that's why I would like to agree and support so the statement of the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, because I would like to draw attention to the fact that there was a lot of, huge consequences that the whole world faced as a result of not adhering to that agreement, the memorandum. Next question. Is this document like worthless? No, not at all. Political rhetorics need to be separated from expert the view. So we need to have that like that approach, weighted approach to to the judgment about to evaluation of this document. So the nature of this document is strategically important for Ukraine. In 2014, so Ukrainian parliament initiated consultations with our partners. And getting back to that is extremely important for us. The only thing is that just concluding the answers to these short questions, I would like to say that it's important to understand that the time has changed. And the main conclusion is that the relationships not just have changed, but unfortunately, they returned to the form, kind of the original and quite harsh form. Unfortunately, in today's world, any agreement cannot guarantee our security and safety. Including the Budapest Memorandum. Especially any agreement with Russian Federation. So our security can only be guaranteed by membership in NATO, and not just the document that will confirm our membership, but also the military and political integration. So that is the main difference between Article 5 of the Washington Agreement and Article 42 Agreement about European Union, that there is informal difference between these articles. So in one of them, there is there are means to provide it, and in the other one there are no means. So, and the second thing that I wanted to say that if we have certain means with the force of impact equal to a weapon with the force of impact that Russia has, that could also help us. Well, I would like to congratulate all of us today with the Day of Ukrainian Armed Forces that we celebrate tomorrow. So that's the day where we can thank our armed forces. And this is a real kind of response to the international affairs now. Yes, thank you so much. I would like to also congratulate all of us with the Day of Artillery Forces. Oh, yes, by the way, I waited for the words about guarantees through NATO, nuclear umbrella, nuclear guarantees, and so on. I have a question to Mr. Mihailo Samus. Are there any guarantees through like nuclear guarantees through NATO? So and what potentially what do we have to prepare for? Because when Budapest Memorandum was in preparation, so there were no threats from Ukraine, but now we already have the facts that Russia, they used the intercontinental missile to strike the territory of Ukraine. So, and potentially that complex can carry nuclear charge. So, what shall we do now? Join NATO? What format? What do we need to do now? So, Mihailo Samos, director of the New Geopolitics Research Network. Thank you so much for thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to participate in this discussion. I believe that it will be a great chance to our young professionals. Uh, s- Sorry, I wanted to mention that we will actually send these to the ministries, but for students, yes, it will be also very useful. Okay, but answering your question, I actually wanted to continue the topic that Mr. Galichuk raised. Speaking of the Ukrainian self-realization, for European self-awareness, because when U.S., the period of time when United States were responsible for security in Europe, that period of time is coming to an end rapidly. And if we say that Europe is not ready, well, nobody asks that question. The time came when Europe, in fact, needs to grow up, become an adult, and so there is no the role of U.S. is getting like not as big, but there is Russia here, and with all their threats. So, and 3,600 the 364 billion. This is the budget of UN military budget, but still Europe spends less than 2%, on the average. I don't like those 2%. This is just dry statistics because we need to speak about capabilities. So, how much Europe needs in order to have that capability? So it's not 2, not 3%. So President Macron actually mentioned that when he spoke about autonomy. So because in Europe they don't have strategic intelligence forces, um, strategic so they don't have all that. Uh, they don't have strategic satellite. And what else Macron mentioned? So the system against, the complexes against missiles. So there are no complexes that would be able to protect Ukraine from such missiles like Oreshnik, Rubesh, and so on. There are Ukrainian and Israeli, American and Israeli complexes, but Europe does not have such complexes. And I think this is such a shame because Europe needs to have such complex. And President Macron says that. So there are three important measures for strategic deterrence of Russia. So ballistic missiles that actually Ukraine works on it now and not Europe, but they can start helping. So, and then the third component, that is a nuclear component. So if we will also take into consideration UK, I believe that UK has to participate in the European security system. And so we need to also think about the nuclear component. And it's not crossing any like international agreements or anything like that. But, well, Ukraine can speak not about their own nuclear weapon, but about European nuclear weapon. Why not? Like in a broader context. And I believe that this direction has a lot of future, a lot of perspectives. So Ukraine has to have the guarantees, security guarantees, Ukrainian national interests. That's the first thing that needs to be discussed. As we mentioned before. So cluster and cassette weapons. So it's not a good thing to use it. Well, now it's already accepted. So then there was another issue with the mines. So the issue was with the anti-personnel mines. So now Russia and the US, they haven't signed it. We have signed it. At least we got those anti-personnel mines. So we are actually now standing at a very interesting point when we have to become such a leader of rethinking such safety issues, and this can become such platform that will prove to Europeans that, well, we all have to become adults, not to expect anything from Washington. So in frames of NATO we can have two like parts, European and American, like serious Europeans, serious Americans, especially if we will support each other in terms of energy. Maybe it sounds a little bit like a dream, but from my point of view, it's still a reality. Thank you so much. But yeah, so I still would like to ask, speaking of your NATO membership, because, uh, so we support, of course, the statements that were made before about our membership in NATO. So, but in the situation when Russia threatens to use a nuclear weapon, Yeah, so just before yesterday, we talked about like membership in NATO, not just invitation. But now, the second question, if that, NATO membership will still guarantee us security from nuclear threats or not. Thank you so much. I completely agree with you. It's a very interesting discussion. And from the point of view of history and from the point of view of what shall we do, I'm extremely grateful for the book to Mr. Kostenko. I read it, and it was very interesting for me to see it with the eyes of parliamentarians because I knew it from more like from the other side. So there was very interesting a letter by Mr. Nixon who so it was dated by April 2024. So after visiting Moscow and Kiev, he advised to his president to support Russia. And he also mentioned that chaos in parliament in Ukraine was a bad thing that he mentioned. So, and it looked, it sounded from that letter like Ukraine, it's a chaos, and Russia, it's order. Valery asked to mention maybe some provoking things. I will mention two things, and maybe Mr. Mereshko will not agree with the first thought. Budapest Memorandum is a paper. If we look at Article 5 of the Washington Agreement, where, like, and speaking of South Korea, Israel, and others, there is no kind of automatic procedure that US will come to rescue. So when they were creating NATO, but in the first kind of project was described kind of automatic response, but then representatives of America said no, we need to participate. So there was kind of a morphic article. So the power of those agreements is in fact that US administration understands that important national interests of US will also you know they have important their interest in that country, in that region. If something will threaten, so then they will have to apply weapon, even like including nuclear weapon, you know so any document has a power when there is a political will. But for that we need to our authorities to to protect our national interests. And the second thing that I want to say, that the good news for us today is that it's possible that Ron DeSantis will become a minister of defense in US. And in that administration there will be quite not bad nominants to the key positions and the counselor in national security issues and general and state secretary. So those are people who with whom we can use argumentation. Of course, for them Ukraine and Europe is not like life important region such as, for example, China, but still they understand that it's like in playing chess. So you cannot just you know f- follow to what Mr. Obama did, and just neglect one or some areas. Unfortunately, now we have this situation in Ukraine and in Middle East and Syria. But again, I can say that Budapest Memorandum may become not just a paper. We live in a third nuclear period because Russia threatens. By the way, there was today there was a phone conversation with Gerasimov and the representative of Russia, and they mentioned that Oreshnik. So there was just testing that weapon. So they are like, from one side they are threatening, from the other side they understand that the world is watching them and China is watching them. So they are just trying to find such a such line. So um, China grows their nuclear potential, and even like so they have 500 nuclear heads and they want to even increase it to 1000. Despite the the fact despite the kind of Arab states, they will understand that there is still a responsibility. Such countries as Saudi Arabia, so Egypt, who also said that you can put a nuclear weapon on our territory. They will understand that international agreements have do not provide any guarantees if you don't have nuclear weapons. So I think that's very important argumentation with in for international negotiations. So speaking of NATO, so speaking of Euro-Atlantic integration, we talk about membership in NATO. Well, I completely agree that maybe now we are kind of on the brink of crisis of NATO. So of course, Europeans will have to think first of all about nuclear deterrence, and we know that France keeps nuclear weapon exclusively for themselves. They do not even have guarantees that I mean they do not even guarantee that they will use it protecting their NATO allies. But we have few possible scenarios for guarantees. Number one, nuclear weapon for Ukraine. That's really hard, very hard question. Number two, the strategy, so we have to become like a mini NATO. That's kind of a porcupine strategy, but it's hard to do that, especially considering the size and the amount of weapon in Russia, and especially if it will be especially considering the last tendencies. So I think that the amount of weapon that we're going to get in the future will reduce. So, and then next scenario, membership in NATO. Either in NATO in the form it exists now or in some other form. And there is a kind of number of countries such as in NATO who are going to protect themselves and the allies. So, but this all is like rhetorical things like give us invitation. So this is kind of trying to move a little bit on the bridge, because before we were talking about the doors to NATO, they are like not open, but they are like a little bit open. But then they talked about the breach. This is just different rhetorics, but meaning is the same. We can only have guarantees for security guarantees when we have including strategic nuclear weapon, and when we know how to use it, for deterrence of Russian Federation. It depends on the confederation in Washington. The new administration of Donald Trump. So if they will decrease their role, or those people will say that no, Europe is very important. That's why we will keep the nuclear umbrella, and we will support Ukraine as well. So it's hard, So, unfortunately, our interests do not fully go in line with American interests, because they didn't want to help us in 2022, 2023 to have complete victory. They just wanted us achieve some success, and for Putin to negotiate, to sit at the negotiation table. But, also speaking of missile systems, drone systems, and so on, I believe that we need to follow the path of Finland in order to prepare for NATO membership, improve our army, and then wait for that, the window of opportunities in order to become NATO member. And of course, we cannot agree on any, agree for any alternative guarantees, because now they are trying to sell us the same thing they sold us in the beginning of 90s. I understand that there is a lack of desire, not understanding. There is no desire to share risks with Ukraine, but I like such expression by Einstein that problems raised on one level can only be solved on a higher level. So, what happened already without escalation from the West, including USA, including these, threats from Russia about using nuclear weapon, so it cannot be solved on the level of Ukraine and Russia. Otherwise you could, so Europeans already considering that. Americans, we will see. Thank you. It looks like it's a topic for another roundtable, but we are coming to an end on the time and on the composition. So I would like to ask Mr. Makarov. What do you think? Our opinions that we share today. So, you as a journalist and documentary filmmaker, so what is your impression? Wha- and how different is what you heard here from what you heard abroad? So, please, in general, these are kind of transfer from, you know, journalist and documentary filmmaker to an expert. Have you performed that transfer already? Okay, yes, my microphone works. Yeah, well, I still feel something like imposter complex, because I'm not neither diplomat nor a politician nor the military. I don't have that education, but instead, I have important aspect, informational and cultural, psychological, where I feel like more as an expert. So and. These aspect can be decisive, critical, especially when if there are elections in a certain country, or when the kind of society and the soul of society starts to put pressure on politicians. Such things happen. So, uh, speaking of Budapest Memorandum and our work in this area, that question was discussed in August, the film that you mentioned before was already broadcasted in August, and it's still available for watching. And there is still English version, but we haven't made it available yet. So working with that material, we felt something like, I wouldn't say boycott, but it's kind of you know um, such a feeling that it's like caution from the side of participants and experts, uh, whom we counted on, in particular from American side. And when we agreed with certain speakers and they said, okay, well, you can count on us, and then closer to the point of contact, they kind of change their position. And then when I showed to them our English version, to some of my personal American acquaintances from different circles, then I received two types of reaction. Number one, we have never heard anything like that. We have never read anything like that. So we, nobody ever showed or told us anything like that, in this format. And then another reaction from our, ex. Ukrainians who became Americans already. So, and they were like, oh, that's not really balanced. I haven't fully understood who we have to balance it with, because I tried to, represent all possible points of view. Maybe they would expect us to present point of view, like Russian point of view. I don't know. But from the other side, I understand that this topic is very uncomfortable, and it's even now. So when you go to bibliography, so then you realize that a part of the book by Yuri Ivanovich that is translated by English. I don't know who translated it. And there is another book. No, it's not published yet. It's not published yet. It's in preparation. So that's a book by that American expert. Yeah, she just contacted me this morning. Aha, okay. So there is another book. The book by Russian General Filatov, but it's pretty comprehensive, and that is kind of, he is professional in his sphere, and we have to consider his opinion too. And that's pretty much all we have, pretty much all we can show in our today's work. So, next, Mr. Lubkivsky knows me a little bit better. I'm not, like shy to speak about it, but when we appealed to some of our institutions, ministries, Ukrainian Institute, and they asked us like, "What do you want? What do you need? Hey, come on, guys." I don't need anything from you. You need something from me. So you have 2 hours of product, more or less competitive product. So you don't have to translate it. So take it, use it. So it's already made product in few languages. So please take it, use it. So now we try to also come to such platforms as Netflix, and in January. So we are presented in Brussels, but it's not through our official institutions. It's just I use my professional complex. So, but I'm not offended. I mean, it's not the right thing to be offended at work. But I'm just trying to say that that's so important to make this topic known for the audience, for the international audience. So we had couple of broadcasts. So when people, when they watch our documentary, like, oh, really? We never knew. We never thought. We never heard. So, oh, sorry, that meant my 7 minutes. And I believe that this is a lack of understanding of a problem that needs to be fixed. It's not about like reminder but it's about just rethinking, how it was just mentioned before, of European, like reassessment of European security system. Despite certain, without any conspiracy. But this, but I must. Yeah, you said you're not a diplomat, but you just said everything and still a lot of details to say. I believe that it would be cool if this film like in, I don't know, could be shown like in format of parliament hearings. Maybe Alexei Honcharenko can suggest it. I don't know. You, you know, especially English version of that documentary. I think that would be very good. So why not? Why not to try it? Okay, I will not summarize. Thank you so much, so Mr. Yuri Makarov. So I saw this documentary. There are a lot of important thoughts there, and we could have like one more round table just on that. And there are a lot of participants, and what you heard from us, it's not the whole thing. I'm talking with the deputies, of the first and second parliament of Ukraine. So if it would be 227, that would be one story. But when it was like 20 experts, so that was probably different story. But let's not forget communists. They have, you know, you remember that group 239, we remember that. I can tell you from my experience, that is no, I was invited to parliament, and nobody else wanted to go, and they didn't even Alexander Ross was a speaker, and they didn't even give me the time to speak. So but today we have a unique possibility to kind of unite all the branches of power. So, the only thing that I would like us to agree upon is that not in such 2 hour option, but maybe so we will give it to our partners, um, so our partners like to listen to podcasts, we do it different in different languages. I think that maybe just going somewhere in the car, like in the suburbs of Paris, or maybe they could just listen to such things. But also, I think that if those theses will sound, from different aspects. So, 3 things are clear for me right away. Number one is that Budapest Memorandum is a real document that lives its life, and it just we need to work with it. So, I mean, we cannot just say that, oh, we forgot about it, if it's a monument, not monument. No, that is not correct. That, we need to work with it, especially speaking of nuclear threats that we all hear. The second important thing that we all agreed upon, so European, like Euro integration, NATO. So, uh, I also wanted to mention OSCE. It's a very famous, organization. So you know all those names more than I do. So it's just one of the directions. Yeah, but I agree with you. So I mean, I think it's time to just eliminate OSCE. They don't do anything. Yeah, sorry, we do not. We do not. We do not leave it in our international version. Yeah. Okay. So the nuclear weapon in Europe. That's interesting thing. So kind of yeah, include like engagement of Ukraine, not just a weapon, like mini NATO, and certain like intermediate stage. So, and if we do not talk about membership in NATO, I mean, if we talk about membership in NATO, so then we're going to have like delegations from Washington. By the way, I would really love these delegations to come in the same, like to come to the same offices. Why not to come to the future Council on National Security? All those key figures, including these the counselor of the next president. So they are all there. So all the deputies whom we invited today, and I'm grateful for all their international work, but there are official delegations there, that is led by de facto by Yermak or de jure, or I don't know. And so that delegation is parliament delegation. So all of them, they are all together, so they could put some pressure because there will be no other opportunity like that. So Britain, Poland, Ukraine, that's already like they have more citizens than Russia. So speaking of nuclear potential, that is that idea, political idea that sounded in 2019, that triangle. Maybe we need to talk about sub-regional union. Speaking of bringing this issue to higher level, I agree with Mr. Kostenko. Budapest option, it's just the question in what, till what scale, So that's UK and Britain, but without China, with nuclear guarantees. It's hard to, yeah. So that's issue. Yeah, I heard you. I heard you. Who are you? Please wait. Why are you screaming? Okay. Oh, I lost my thought. Yeah, but it's hard for me to. It's hard to make me lose my thought. But honestly, so normally we just wait until speaker will finish and then ask questions. Okay, so I wanted to say China supporters joined, but France, and speaking of the initiative that we heard from the President Macron, the nuclear umbrella for Europe, a lot of questions. I will not mention everything. We used our 2 hours. So Alexei Honcharenko, hopefully he will not leave right away. Let us give 10 minutes, for questions. So please give him the microphone here. Please introduce yourself. My name is Petro Konona. I'm an expert in the Ukraine membership in NATO, and I'm a colonel of the Ukrainian army, so a retired colonel. So from my sit, I apologize. So you just it's a time for questions. It's not time for speeches. So dear colleagues, the format. So if you have questions, so you ask question. If you want to comment, you have 3 minutes. While 2 minutes will be enough for me, honestly. Since Alexander mentioned mini NATO and Yurichalik confirmed, so that's a question for another discussion. But also, somebody mentioned that we need to share it not just with our, but also with international diplomats. Speaking of Budapest Memorandum, yeah, so it's important to study the material part because there is Hartia about special partnership between NATO and Ukraine from by 1997, and in 1999 in Washington summit was also admitted action plan. So, and it was mentioned that Hartia is NATO a key. So everything that was mentioned here that needs to be done, that work was already done actually. It's just the question is that so our authorities and assistance to our deputies, those who prepare documents for the presidential office, they just need to study that database, and our students, future diplomats as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for keeping to the time. Okay, please give the microphone that way. Can you introduce yourself? Vadim Holovko, Institute of the History of Ukraine. So I have a question or comment just for 3 minutes. First of all, I wanted to mention position that European Memorandum is not a paper. It's very important document that is in action. And I wanted to only bring one, argumentation. So it's like in spring 1995, it helped stabilization of the situation in Ukraine. So when Russia, you remember that story with Crimea, separatism, Meshkov, so they was not directly connected, but so those forced actions. So we remember May 1995, Bill Clinton was in Kiev, and at the same time there was Crimea crisis, and So speaking of China. So not just comment, but also rhetoric question. I don't fully understand why Ukrainian diplomacy doesn't use the 2013 appeal from Ukraine and China. So number 4 says that China confirmed the guarantees, security guarantees, and also it mentioned there that if Ukraine will become a victim of aggression and even be threatened threatened by using a nuclear member, so there were if Ukraine will be threatened by the use of nuclear weapon, so there were given certain security guarantees. So why would you not work on that today? Sorry and thank you. Sorry for not keeping to the time. No, you kept the time. Thank you. Now we will close your round table, and I would like to invite Alexander Mereshko. Again, Alexander. So I would say about the statement from Ukrainian parliament. So please read not just history but the realities. I would like to invite Boris Johnson to speak instead of myself. Well, I mean his last book. So what he's saying about Budapest Memorandums there, I believe it's very important because it just shows us how the politicians now perceive the meaning of the essence of Budapest Memorandum. So, and they said that the essence is of this memorandum is that this is kind of a promise that given by US and the UK that if Ukraine will become a victim of invasion, then US and UK will come to rescue. And there is a phrase, I will just quote it in English: until Ukraine is in NATO, the Budapest Memorandum must rank for book-wrathfulness with a piece of paper once waved by Nero Chamberlain. So, and yeah, and so thank you so much. On this, I believe that this discussion will not end with the end of this roundtable. It still needs to be continued. And I believe that those suggestions that we heard here, to make it in the form of parliament hearings or committee hearings or maybe in the form of forum, discussion, or any other format this year, now, in December, without delay. That would be very useful. And as our retired colonel here said that, it's important to, consider the previous experience and the history of the Meshkov's period. All that is very good, but unfortunately now many people abroad, they do not even know about this the Budapest Memorandum. They do not know that Ukraine ever had the nuclear weapon. So some research showed that our topic is not even in top 50 topics in the world. Of course, Georgia is in top topics, and South Korea, and in Middle East. But unfortunately, we are so far now So we need to return, informational subjectness to Ukraine. And this is one of the topics that unites politically, unites with experts. There are certain nuances, but I really appreciate all of you who came here, who shared your opinions, and hopefully that these recommendations that were mentioned many times, I know, many times, so hopefully, yeah, they will make their way. So thank you so much for your professional opinion, professional discussion. I think it was a wonderful discussion, pretty emotional, and it will be useful, at least for the participants of this discussion. Thank you so much for listening. And as a moderator, I want to say thank you so much to those participants who saved time for all the participants and spoke shortly. And we almost